I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made...
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Halcyon Razor Review. I'm your host, Lon Risley. On this episode I'm going to be taking a look at a cartoon, but I've never come across a cartoon that's as unworthy of the term cartoon as this show is. We're going to be talking about the Boondocks. The Boondocks was a television show that was introduced to me by a friend by the name of Craig, way back in the day, before we watched a Royal Rumble. I believe it was the one that Edge won, if someone wants to tell me what year that was. And basically the premise of the show is two kids who for some reason have lost their parents, move in with their granddad. What's the predication of the show is that it's predominantly it's for black people. There's no other way of cutting that. Now the reason why I say that is because Aaron Magruder, the creator of the show, set out to expressly create a show that demographic would understand and relate to and gravitate to. Now, when my friend showed me this, I don't know if he really realised the impact it would make on me, because while I'm clearly not a black person, I still related to certain aspects of the show and found certain elements of its humour funny, if not a bit uncomfortable. After I got over that element though, I enjoy the show immensely, and more to the point, because my friend happens to be black, it meant I felt enabled to enjoy it, because that's the thing with this show, and this is the reason why when I've showed it to people in the past, they do feel somewhat uncomfortable with its pretense and its content, because it really does get to the nub and does not even bother trying to negotiate the quagmire of race, and just gets to the nub of what it thinks is funny, what it needs to highlight, and what it wants to highlight. Having a character by the name of Uncle Ruckus who is expressly a self-hating black person is something that I struggled to deal with at first because I didn't know how to feel about it. The show, and that's the greatest credit I can give to the show, it's incredibly mind-opening and self-examining as a viewer of this content. So to try and not get myself in trouble, I'm going to review this as tactfully as I can, and also try to approach it with at least some manner of being mindful of offending people on this one occasion. So this is the Halcyon Razor review of the Boondocks cartoon series. So to kick off with, let's look at the presentation of the show and how it sets itself apart from things like Family Guy or South Park. The story of each episode will usually begin with some seemingly simple premise, but will often snowball to impossibly high stakes, leading the characters into conflicts, clashes of philosophy, and oftentimes a lesson to take away at the end of the show. The characters are all deep and often complex. Huey tends to be the voice of reason and wisdom with a knowledge of social activism and martial arts.
What the hell is wrong with you people? Every famous nigga that gets arrested is not Nelson Mandela?
Riley is the voice of the modern day perception of black youth and has various obsessions with music and material gain.
You're not paying the girl, you're paying the restaurant. But I'm paying, which makes her a hoe. Why don't I just give her the money I was gonna spend on dinner, and that hoe can go grocery shopping?
And Grandad is the voice of a jaded older demographic that struggles with current day notions and longs for a time past and inherently distrusts people of other ethnicities.
Ow!
You're having that dream where you made the white people riot, weren't you?
But I was telling the truth!
How many times have I told you you better not even dream about telling white folk the truth? You understand me?
Episodes such as the second in the first series, showcasing their balls of steel when they decided to cover the R. Kelly trial, video evidence and all, was not only extremely funny but served to illustrate a wider point.
Boo! Hey, you with the afro! Give it a rest! Beat it!
A few moments later.
I did battle with ignorance today, and ignorance won.
That the show then buries much in the same way that real life does, when Huey's impassioned speech is interrupted by the onset of a performance by R. Kelly in the courtroom he was acquitted in. Oh, and the late great Adam West was his defense lawyer. Need I say more as to the context and hilarity of this situation?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all that needs to be said is this.
The show does a great job of this, and while I would say that the comedy is very niche and won't land with everyone due to its very colloquial delivery and heavy reliance on American culture, there is enough there for the casual to be shocked and entertained in the same breath. The stories can be simple, but they can also be absolutely insane, but suffice it to say there will be lines crossed with your own personal sense of comfort, but that is the point of view of the show. Stinkmeaner's revenge and the tale of Thomas Dubois will make you feel genuine sympathy for the character of Thomas, while other episodes such as Guess Hoes Coming to Dinner or the premiere show of the second series will be tamer and endear you more to the characters. If I was going to make a recommendation, I would certainly say sit through the first season. The second season will take it to new heights and the animation style does improve somewhat. But in terms of characters, premise, setting and story, this show is absolutely fantastic.
And so with the presentation out of the way, let's try and look at the premise and setting of this show to see why I think that some people might struggle to get to grips with it and indeed invest in it.
The show itself centres on the main characters of the Freemans, an African-American family consisting of brothers Huey and Riley, along with their main guardian, Robert Freeman, or Granddad as he's also known.
Granddad, you're only making things much, much worse.
Oh, hush, boy. I can rap. Big Tank, please make it hot, player. Yeah, this rap go out to Punknificent in all his fame.
They live in a rural suburb of Woodcrest, a predominantly white community, and the show centres around the stereotypes, preconceptions and realities of life in America as it pertains to the experience of African Americans. However, it does this by skewing the reality to ridiculous proportions in an attempt to better emphasise the point the creators wish to make, along with improving the comedy on the show by creating very unique, if reprehensible, characters and situations. These serve to parody society in America, especially when it comes to the satire of the very controversial topics such as the inherent racism faced by people every single day.
Watch closely. You're about to experience a nigger moment. Webster defines the nigger moment as a moment when ignorance overwhelms the mind of an otherwise logical Negro male.
Let's put the guns away and go on about our business.
Freeze!
But they all end up bad. If they had their own category, nigger moments would be the third leading killer of black men behind pork chops and FEMA. It's a fact.
The use and acceptability of the N-word, which, out of respect, I'll refrain from using in this review, despite being given a pass by my friend back in the day to use it. Oh, Craig! I'm not going to assume everyone in the Midlands is familiar with you and your signature to go around dropping the N-bomb like it's going out of style just because you gave me a quote-unquote hood pass. Overall, the show has a shocking style and touches on a lot of darker themes, but does so in a vastly intelligent and entertaining way, and we follow these characters in their neighbourhoods as they confront these notions and have various adventures.
And so we come to the final section, the characterization and characters of the show and the source of nearly all of this show's humour.
The style of the show follows a manga/anime style, which is very stylized and very impressive simply from an aesthetic standpoint. Each character looks unique, moves in distinct ways, and the backgrounds and motion look outright amazing and beautiful at times. The action sequences are really well choreographed and are as good as anything Dragon Ball Z or Naruto have to offer, except with the added bonus of a soundtrack in each episode that's worth buying in of itself, with the intro sequence being so good to listen to it gets you hyped for each episode so well. Now, while it has a very traditional style in terms of presentation as it pertains to anime and manga, its content is not for the faint of heart. I'm talking immense levels of violence, full frontal male nudity and female nudity, disturbing images of racism, rape, murder, all with the purpose of trying to engage the audience and asking them to accept the reality of their world first before bringing them back to earth with the comedy it employs, which is a mixture of witty writing using the characters' mannerisms and the absurdity of the ancillary characters.
Removing an evil nigger spirit from a Negro is as hard as removing the stank from a hunk of shit. We must use these tools that the great God has given us to fight niggers. A whip, a noose, a nightstick, a branding iron. These things strike fear into a nigger's heart. A job application.
Prime examples of this wicked sense of humour would be the self-hating black man Uncle Ruckus, who is hands down one of the most offensive characters ever, but somehow one of the funniest once you grasp the spirit of his character and the creator's wish to put forward to you.
Oh no, this can't be. It says I'm 102% African with a 2% margin of error. Why, Lord? Why, Lord? Why?
Another would be a pimp named Slickback. Yes, you say the whole thing. It's like a Tribe Called Quest. Yes, sir, every time. Played by Cat Williams, who is so funny every time he pops up in the show.
Did you know that at least 75% of bitches suffer from some kind of hearing loss? This alarming statistic means that more likely than not, talking isn't the most effective way to communicate with a bitch.
Charlie Murphy and Samuel L. Jackson playing privileged white men who aspire to be ghetto-style gangsters is such a joy to behold. And not to mention the various real-world characters they lampoon and bring into the fold, the show holds no bars, pulls no punches in its pursuit of comedy through the lens of the satirization of America. People like Martin Luther King, Ghostface Killer, and others make appearances in thought-provoking and interesting ways. It's amazing, and something that you need to see to experience and understand. And so we come to the verdict. Now, I'm slightly biased because I've had a lot of time to get to grips, understand, digest, and indeed interpret the show for myself, which means that I have a comparably favourable viewpoint on this show to something like Family Guy, for instance. I actually would argue that this show is better in quality than Family Guy just because that it, like South Park, it has a message with which it wants to approach things, but doesn't necessarily care too much about who it offends going along the way to trying to get to their truth. Family Guy, I think, sets out to just offend people, and if it had access to the kind of material that this goes, that would be a really dangerous proposition. Luckily though, Aaron Magruder and the creators of the show always had a clear vision for what they wanted to say in terms of its story and narrative. So I would argue that the show is an 8 out of 10. It really is that good. The presentation style is unique, engrossing. The fight scenes are amazingly well choreographed and designed. The characters, while polarizing and downright offensive in certain circumstances, once put into their proper context, are hilarious. With, like I say, Uncle Ruckus being one of my favourite characters, which you shouldn't really admit to considering the context of a lot of what he says. But when you understand the reasoning behind it and the message that they're trying to convey, you do feel kind of at ease to enjoy the show for what it is, which is a take on the lives of Black America and the problems that they face without having to kind of worry about the write-ins and the people going, oh, they shouldn't be using the N-word. That kind of becomes a backseat issue towards the latter part of the first series. Second series, I think it's brought up maybe once in an episode as a content of the episode itself. But be warned, if you're easily offended, this will be a show that you will struggle with, because even in the first episode, when they're trying to maybe lure the audience in and get them, invested slowly, two things happen within the first 10 minutes that I guarantee most people will go, not watching that anymore. But if you can get past that, honestly, this show is worth investing in. It's a great watch. Just make sure you try and understand the context of it first without taking it at face value. You'll get a kick out of it, I promise you. So thank you very much for watching this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Halcyon Razor Review.